Good to see you. Thank you. God, I know it.
Okay, at this time I'm going to ask all the candidates to come up and take their seat at the front table. Last chance for y'all to grab some coffee and cookies and snacks or whatever until the break. We're going to get this show started right at 2 o'clock. And there's still open seats on the front row. What's up with you guys? And everybody either turn off your cell phone or put it in airplane mode, please. We're getting ready to fly. Okay, this is your 1 minute warning. Come on down and take a seat. Tell me when to go.
You did it last time.
She may come back to know it. She did it herself.
Okay, guys, we're going to get this show on the road. We've got a time frame, and we're going to follow it. No messing around here. All right, welcome, everybody. My name is Deborah Frank. I am the Fayette County Republican Party chairman. I have to keep reminding myself of that. Anyway, thank you for taking the time out of your Saturday afternoon to come to this forum and educate yourself, get to know the candidates, listen to what they have to say. I really appreciate you taking the time and coming out. First, we're going to get started. I'd like to ask you all to stand while we do the pledges to the flags, starting with the United States flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Okay, real quickly, I want to recognize any of the elected officials that are in the office right now. I know I saw Judge Steinhauser was here. Hey, Judge. I saw Jason McBroom is in here somewhere. There he is, over in the corner. Are there any others that I missed along the way? Any elected officials?
Round top.
Round top? Okay. Okay. Introduce yourself, sir. I don't live in Round Top.
Yeah, come on.
Must be pretty unfamiliar. Sometimes that's good.
That's a good one.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, we as Fayette County residents and voters are going to have to make some big decisions in the next few weeks. To help you in this effort, the Fayette County Republican Party is hosting 4 forums covering the 5 contested races in Fayette County. The first one was for County Commissioner in Precinct 2. That was held on January 23rd up in Round Top at Hinkle Hall. We had a great turnout there. Then on February 1st, last Thursday, a week ago, we hosted the House District 13 candidates right here in the Ag Building. Another good turnout, but I think we even exceeded our last turnout this time for our Fayette County judge candidates. And again, thanks for coming out. The purpose of these forums is to allow voters to hear the candidates, provide information on their background, their experience pertinent to the position they're seeking, and their visions for the future of Fayette County. Let's face it, Fayette County is growing. We can't stop the growth, but we can be prepared to manage it wisely if we elect the persons who are best suited to fill these positions. Those who have the experience and determination to serve Fayette County best. Okay. And like I said, Fayette County is growing whether we like it or not. We need to choose our elected officials wisely. And that's why I appreciate so much y'all coming out to educate yourself with these forums. So before I begin, I want my expectations for this forum to be clear. Our purpose is simply to allow voters to get to know each of these candidates. Their responses should reflect their experience, knowledge, abilities, and how they're being elected to the position sought will benefit Fayette County. Housekeeping issues, restrooms are straight out that door, straight back in the hallway. Of course, we have coffee and snacks up here. And I also want to recognize, in addition to the Fayette County Republican Party and the Fayette County Republican women who are helping to host this and provide such wonderful snacks up there, we also have our moderators, Larry Jackson, the former editor of the Fayette County Record, and Jeff Wick, who is the current editor of the Fayette County Record. Our timekeeper is former Justice of the Peace Dick Frenzel, and our citizens on patrols trying to keep this rowdy crowd under control, Miss Pat Settle and Daryl, forgot his name. Kinsey. Daryl Kinsey. Thank you. Also, finally, a special thanks go out to Frank Hillboat, who provided the sound system for all 4 of these forums. Without his help, we would be dead in the water. You wouldn't be even hearing me. Is that better? Okay. Frank always tell me to hold it close.
Yeah, I'm closing.
Not eat it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll get this down. Luckily, you don't have to hear from me very much. Okay, I got that. One thing I want our former Republican Party treasurer to come up here just for a minute and beg for money.
Well, it certainly is nice to see so many people out here. And you all recognize that there are some expenses involved. They're not great. And we don't ask anybody for a great contribution. But we have envelopes back there, and we would like to ask you to make a minor contribution. Please fill out the envelopes with your name at least, so that we can stay legal and know that, in fact, we are deriving support from a broad spectrum of people instead of from 2 or 3 people who expect favors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arnold. Okay, just to give you a little idea of how this is going to be, each of the candidates are going to be given 3 minutes to introduce themselves, talk about their background, their experience, their qualifications for the position, basically whatever they want to talk about. They have 3 minutes apiece. You'll see there are only 4 candidates up here right now. Michael Smalley, Joe Weber, Sharon Muzny, and James Rhodes. Unfortunately, I got an email from Bryan Corb this morning that said he wasn't going to be able to make this forum. So we only have to go through questions with these 4. So that simply means y'all have more questions, which is a good thing. Okay, so as I said, each candidate will have 3 minutes in the beginning to introduce themselves. When the moderators start the question and answer period, each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond to the question. Mr. Frenzel will be very diligent in keeping you on that time frame, and don't make him ring that cowbell. Okay, and then after the first round of questioning, questions will start in ballot order. That's how the candidates are seated right now. The first question will go to the first candidate, then the second question will start with the second candidate, and on and on and on. You get it. When we take a break, it'll be about 3:45, I think, according to my schedule here. And at that time, we'll ask you to turn in any written audience questions at the beginning of the break, and then those will be given to the moderators. They'll go through them, and we'll ask audience questions after we come back from the break. Finally, after the second round of questions, each candidate will have 2 minutes to give their last remarks and cover anything that they feel hasn't been covered through the questioning. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and Larry and let them start the questioning.
Well, actually, I guess we're going to allow them to make their opening statements first, right? So, Mr. Smalley, your opening statement first. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. I'm Michael Smalley from Grange, Texas, and I decided to run for county judge because I want to serve the citizens of Fayette County. My family has been in this county for the past 33 years. I have been actively involved in this county for that time, and I feel that experience, along with my experience in government and my education in government, makes me very qualified to do this job. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to visit with those of you I may not know yet and answer your questions today. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Michael. Howdy, I'm Joe Weber, and I'd be honored to serve as your Fayette County judge. That's why I'm here, and I want to thank all of you for being here. I know there's so much going on in our county today, but this meeting is very important, and it's important because I think there's veterans out there who will tell you we've all been in countries around the world that if you tried to gather in a little meeting like this, you would probably risk imprisonment or maybe even your life. And I view this truly as not just a privilege for us to come here and be part of this process, but as an obligation to those who gave their all and include ultimate sacrifice to include many from this county. So thank all of you for coming. In attendance today is my wife, Brenda Weber, of almost 45 years. We live out in Round Top, Texas. I got a granddaughter here too. probably a couple A&M classmates who caused my GPA to be a lot lower than it really should have been. I'm not a local. I was born in Weimar. If you went over there and asked them who Joe Weber was, they probably wouldn't know. I was probably only over there 24 hours in 1950. We were living in Schulenburg at the time. My father had come back from World War II, was getting the GI Bill at A&M, and mother was a nurse and worked in the clinic. My uncles were doctors in Schulenburg. I came back often during the summer as a child to stay here. 1968, I enrolled at Texas A&M, and in 72 was commissioned a second lieutenant, of which I served 36 years in the Marine Corps. For all the Longhorn fans in here, at 15 years into my service in the Corps, the Marine Corps said either I needed to get a real education or a broadened education, and they sent me to the University of Texas to get my master's. So I've got both sides covered. I was fortunate to command at all levels: platoon, battery, battalion, regiment, division, force, expeditionary force. And I think that prepared me well, and we'll talk about that later on. Upon completion of my military service, I served as the Vice President of Texas A&M University for 6 years. And a great opportunity to work with many of our great young men and women, many of them from Fayette County, great people that come from a great background. After that, following that, I served almost 2 years as the Executive Director of the Texas Department of Transportation, again, which I think helped me prepared me to lead the county on into the future. So thank you for having me, and thank you all for being here at this very most important process in our country. Thank you.
Yaksimaj. So my name is Sharon Muzny. I'm a sixth-generation resident of Fayette County, specifically from LaGrange. My husband Stephen's here, and we have 2 young daughters. And I have to say it's kind of funny in a way, and I say God has a sense of humor. Shortly after I announced my candidacy, we also found out we're having our 3rd child. So, due in May. Stephen's a 5th-generation resident of our community as well, and so both of our families have deep roots here locally. And I graduated from LaGrange High School, went to Blinn, all 3 campuses in Blinn, Schulenburg, Bryan, Burnham, over a period of years. Also graduated from UT Austin, so got the Aggie and the Longhorn over here. And my bachelor's is in psychology, and I also was able to get my master's of public affairs, which is specifically in public leadership, from UT Austin as well. I finished that in May of 2015. It was weekend classes while I was working full-time as your EMS director and raising a family, so I'm pretty proud of that. I was able to accomplish that in that time frame. I've been serving as your EMS director for the past 10 years, working in the EMS department here for about 14 to 15 years. So I really find it a privilege to serve our community. I've learned so much from our patients, our residents, their families. And what I've learned is being invited into hundreds of local homes and talking to thousands of our residents, that we really all want the best for our families. And there's different ways to get what's best for our family, but we all have the same aspirations to maintain the quality of life here as we find in Fayette County. So again, I think I have the perfect trifecta: being local, working local, having the county experience in our communities. I know where Walhall is, I know where Engle, I know Middle Creek, I know every place in the county, all 4 corners and everywhere in between. And I love our county, I love our people, and I would find it to be a privilege to continue serving as your county judge. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is James Rhodes. I'm not from here, but as the saying goes, I got here as fast as I could. I've been here for almost 15 years. I'm not Czech. I'm Czech by proxy. I'm married to a full-blood Czech. Right after high school, I joined the U.S. Navy and served on USS John Hancock. Did a 7.5-month tour during the Persian Gulf War during Operation Desert Storm on the John Hancock. After the end of my obligated service, went to University of Houston, used my GI Bill to get educated. Got an undergraduate degree in finance. I worked for some pretty big oil companies in Houston: Shell, ConocoPhillips, Suez. So I have about 15 years of financial analyst and budgeting experience. Because I'm glutton for punishment, I went to law school late in life. at 36 years old. So I have a jurisprudence doctorate degree from South Texas College of Law. I'm also a former state prosecutor, and I have a private practice in LaGrange, and I work in Houston and LaGrange and commute back and forth every day because we have kids here, and it's important that our kids grow up in Fayette County and not Harris County. I believe I have the experience that it takes to do this job. Hopefully you'll learn that better today, and thank you all for being here, and we look forward to the next 3-4 hours.
Well, thank you guys very, very much. I want to thank you, representative of all of us out here, for having the courage and the willingness to serve our county, to be a candidate. It's not easy to be a candidate, and each of you deserves our appreciation for you stepping up and for being here and helping us to understand each of you a little bit better. You've given us a bit of background about who you are. Maybe the next question ought to be, why are you seeking the county judge position, and what's your vision for the future of Fayette County? We're going to start with Mr. Weber.
No, Mr. Smalley.
I'm sorry, Mr. Smalley started with the introductions.
Oh,
Right?
all right.
Did I do that right?
How long do we have?
A minute. Thank you very much. We've got a minute and a half for each question. That's what they tell me. I just read it. I don't make them up. I just read them. But yes, it's a 90 seconds. So we've got a minute and a half. We've got the.
Let's start with Smalley.
We'll start with Mr. Smalley. All right, and we'll go right down there. And Mr. Weber, you'll have the next opportunity to have the first question. So let me just repeat it. Why are you seeking the county judge position, and what's your vision for the future of Fayette County?
Okay. I have a background in government, and I've been very active in the county for a long time. So I feel I know the county and I know the people. And my vision for the county is as follows. I was very fortunate that when I graduated LaGrange High School, I got to come back to this county. And I want that same opportunity for people like me who want to move back here, who grew up here, who want to raise their families here. And my vision for the county is to keep it a great place to live and make it attractive for people to want to come back and live here who grew up here, is to keep the tax rates low. That's my number one priority as county judge, being the chief budget officer of the county. It's one of the main functions of county judge. I want to keep your tax rates low. It's the county commissioners and the county judge's responsibility to maintain a fiscally responsible budget. If we do that, we can keep the tax rates for you very low, which makes it affordable for you to live here and affordable for the younger generation behind me to want to come back and move into this county. I think that's very important. So my vision for this county is to keep it a great place to live by making it an affordable place to live, and it starts with keeping your tax rates low.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Weber.
Okay, why do I want to run? I guess I've been regimented most of my life. I was beat up for 12 years by Sisters of Divine Providence. I was beat up by Corps cadets at Texas A&M and 36 years in the Marines. But for the veterans in here, they understand and realize in the military that it's about leadership. It's about taking charge. It's about taking responsibility. It's about making decisions. It's about accomplishing a mission. It's about bringing people together to do things to make your community or your unit or organization better than it was, and to leave it for those who follow you. And so I think that plays a big part in me wanting to run. I'm still physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, I think, capable of doing that and committed to this county. In addition to that, I think to be the county judge of this county, which most, I think, the people up here have, is a passion for the county. It's a very special place that we live. As Michael said, we've got to work hard to keep it that way. My plan, I'll tell you, it was said earlier, growth is coming whether we like it or not. It's coming. And so my question is, are we ready for it? Are we going to be out in front of it? Are we going to have the right ordinance, rules, regulations, standard operating procedures? Are we going to go target and get the right businesses to come in here to give good jobs and opportunity for all? Are we going to be able to do that? Are we going to be out in front of that to where people come in here and respect our values? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Muzny.
Is it better if we stand up?
They can see you in the back.
So, as I mentioned, working in EMS here in the last 14 or 15 years, I've seen a lot of changes. I've seen how our demographics are changing, how our county, the face of our county is changing. Specifically with our older community members, what I've noticed is we have many widows, widowers living out in the community, and unfortunately, when they pass away, what happens to their land? Usually their adult children live elsewhere. It gets divided up and sold, and so we have many people moving in who aren't originally from here, which is fine, but there's changing expectations on what is expected from Fayette County, from these old residents, I'm going to say old, but long-term residents and newer residents. And I would like to merge these expectations so that we can all benefit, I guess, from them. There are 4 policy priorities I have, which is maintaining the quality of life in Fayette County, community safety, health and wellness, strategic planning and economic development. And I would love to go into detail with you guys on all of these, and maybe the rest of the day we will. But for right now, I think my time's almost out.
Mr. Rhodes.
I'd like to be county judge. I believe I have a unique set of experiences with 15 years of financial analysis and budgeting background. Also being an attorney and having a lot of courtroom and trial experience, I believe I can make a positive impact on the county from day one, and that's why I want to serve as county judge. My vision for the county is growth is coming whether we like it or not. We need to have the laws and ordinances in place to be ahead of that, and we need to decide as a county, do we want fast growth or do we want slow and sustained growth? And I believe that's the best method, because then we have the infrastructure to support that. But we need to look at job opportunities, getting manufacturing businesses in here to provide jobs for the residents of this county. The other goal is to streamline the budget. I believe zero-based budgeting is the answer. It creates a clean, efficient, lean budget with a lot of transparency, and that in return allows us to keep taxes down. Thank you.
All right, this question goes to Mr. Weber first. What are the 3 most critical issues affecting us as a rural community that the county needs to address and resolve in the near future? I'll read that one more time. What are the 3 most critical issues affecting us as a rural community that the county needs to address and resolve in the near future? Mr. Weber.
I think there's 3, Jeff. Great question, and we've already addressed one of them, is growth, and it's coming. And again, we need to be out in front of it to manage it, and because again, whether we like it or not, it's coming. I think the second is probably following that growth is the economic development that's got to be here to accompany it, the type of growth that we want, and we've got to be out in front of that too, and bringing possibly manufacturing or distribution center or something in here that provides good jobs, good paying jobs with benefits that will, that growth, that will cause that growth, and the people with a work ethic and values and standards that want to come here to this county. And then I think a third is the quality of life. How do we do that and maintain the quality of life we have in this county that we've maintained since 1837? I mean, our values, our standards, our heritage, our customs, our traditions. And I think that those are the 3 things that we really need to focus on. And things are changing. It's going to be a very challenging next 10, 20 years ahead of us. And but I think we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Muzny, 3 most critical issues.
I agree, growth as well. As I mentioned, just the demographics of our communities are changing rapidly. I also believe healthcare is another major critical issue. We have decreases in funding from Medicare, third-party insurance billers, and Medicaid, and that's not only affecting your doctor's offices and your hospital, but also our EMS department as well. So rural healthcare is a huge issue throughout the state of Texas and throughout the nation. And I believe that's one of my primary obligations and expectations, is to figure out and collaborate with all the healthcare providers in the community to help increase or continue and maintain the healthcare that's already here. And lastly, I think private property and water rights are a big issue in our rural community. So I would like to maintain private property rights and water rights and not have any large corporations or developments coming in and sucking up our water like you see in communities around us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes, 3 most critical issues.
Again, growth, it's inevitable. We need to be ahead of that. We also need to provide opportunities, job opportunities for our younger folks when they go off to college. Try to get them back in here and give them, good, positive job opportunities. The other is to be able to provide services for our aging population, to maintain their quality of life and the life that they're used to. Make sure we have and proper EMS and those areas covered, and make sure the hospital is prepared and adequately equipped to deal with that. And finally, what comes inevitably with growth, and as a prosecutor in Bastrop County, I saw this, is crime. With growth comes crime. As a county judge, I would be very tough on crime, speed up trials, and hand out punishment where it's due. Again, growth, crime, and provide services for our aging population.
Thank you. Mr. Smalley.
Growth, the budget, and taxes are 3 major priorities. The reason for that is because we're going to have growth, we all know that. But it's not going to mean anything to somebody who can't afford it. You have to be able to afford growth. You have to grow responsibly, but you have to have people come back here to this county to grow. And the only way they're going to do that is if they can afford to do so. So it is the county judge's responsibility to make sure that taxes are kept low, the budget is kept fiscally responsible, to make it affordable. All of you have seen what happens to the healthcare industry when the government gets involved in it. The costs have skyrocketed. People are having to make choices. Well, I can afford to go to the doctor, but I can't afford the prescription meds. So everything starts with the budget in this county, and that's the main function of the county judge, is to work with the county commissioners to make sure the budget is fiscally responsible, because everything starts with that, to make life affordable here. And I, as your county judge, that's my main priority, is I want to make it affordable for you that already live here to be able to continue to do so and live comfortably, and also to attract other people to come here where we can grow and have economic development and have a great place to live. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It looks like every one of you agrees that change is inevitable. So how are you prepared to help us with that? Changes in our population and other things greatly affect rural counties like ours. Tell us how your skills or your experience will help Fayette County retain its natural resources and rural values. And Ms. Muzny, I believe you are the first one there. Let's talk about your backgrounds and your skills and experience.
Can you repeat it again? Sorry. Can you repeat it again?
Let me do this one more time. Tell us how your skills or experience will help Fayette County retain its natural resources and rural values.
Okay. So, because I've been in our community and worked in our community, every part of our community, I understand the uniqueness in every aspect of all of our little towns and cities throughout Fayette County. I also have relationships built up already with public schools, fire departments, sheriff's departments, police departments, our healthcare in our community, and I think those relationships are invaluable to help maintain the growth in the community. And I can't remember.
Just skills and experience.
Skills and experience. So
keep it like you want it. Whatever
so yes, I think
during change.
having the relationships are a huge part already built, and seeing what the county's been through, what all the cities in our community's been through, I think would be a big asset to help with the change.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes, skills and experiences in dealing with change.
Well, it's easy to say that growth is coming and we need to look at opportunities to bring industry in and manufacturing and distributing, various sorts of businesses. I believe with my 15 years of financial analysis background, I'm not just going to take a company if they come in and say, hey, we want to put in a a plant or a distribution center here, I don't have to just take their word for it. I can actually look at the numbers and vet those numbers, stress test them, and cut through the fluff, if you will. So I think that is a set of skills that I have that I could offer. The other with change and maintaining rural values, again, I just kind of go back to growth and crime, and I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but that comes with, with growth, and it's from my experiences in Bastrop County. And we need to have a judge who has the qualifications and the experience to hear those type of cases and to do something about it. We need to have those bad actors come before a jury of their peers or before a judge, and to be held accountable and responsible for their choices. And I can do that. I can do that on day one because of my experiences in the courtroom.
All right. Mr. Smalley, tell us how your skills or experience will help Fayette County retain its natural resources and rural values.
Okay, in order to maintain our values, I believe we need someone in the county judge's office who knows the county. I bring you 33 years of experience in this county, knowing how to work with people. I don't know all of you, but I know many of you, and I've already developed working relationships with many of you. I also believe very strongly in the concept of teamwork, the way we're going to get things done and maintain our values and deal with change, which happens all the time, is we're going to do it by working together. I know how to do that. I know how to do that by my experiences in this county. I know how to do that by my experiences having a government background education. And I know how to deal with change that comes all the time. And sometimes you don't have any time to prepare for change, but you got to deal with it. And so I believe the best way to deal with change that's coming all the time is to work together on that. And with my 33 years of experience in this county, I bring you that as someone who I believe will most effectively be able to deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weber.
Thank you. I think it has to deal with the challenges that are going to be facing us, and having the leadership and the expertise and experience to face those challenges, because they're coming, and it's not just growth. I mean, it's economy, it's budgets. We're a small rural county out here, and I'm going to tell you, when things tighten up in the state, I'll tell you who's going to get the attention. It's going to get the big cities. It's going to get the attention with Rhodes. It's going to get the attention to other forms of revenue that come in there. And I have experience at the federal and state level. I don't have any intention of going back to either one of them. But I do know that we've got to be very aggressive in taking care of ourselves, the type of grants we go after. I'm a firm believer of OPM, other people's money, and we've got to do those kind of things while monitoring the strings attached to those. Be very aggressive. Be at the table. Go find those businesses that we want to come in here. Deal with them. Deal with the state legislator. Let our needs be known. We've got to be very aggressive of that. Thank you.
All right, this goes to Mr. Rhodes first. All of you have very distinguished backgrounds, but which of your accomplishments are you most proud of, and why?
I was telling someone the other day, I knocked on their door and introduced myself down in Flatonia, and I was kind of going through my, life experiences and educations and things like that. And I told him when I was 17 years old, I made the best decision of my life, and it's still paying dividends today, and that was choosing to serve my country. I grew up really fast. 60 days after graduating high school in Marshall, Texas, and really having only strayed as far away as Dallas from there, which is about 2 hours, I found myself in Chicago, Illinois, thinking, what in the world did I just do? And so my first time on an airplane was to go to boot camp. But just serving my country, it has if you haven't served, I guess it's hard to understand or explain, but there's just a sense of pride that you get, and a sense of accomplishment, and it allows you to see people from all walks of life. It allows you to see places that you probably would have never gotten to see otherwise. And to this day, that's the best and proudest decision I've ever made.
Thank you. Mr. Smalley, which accomplishment are you most proud of?
I would say my decision to come back and live in this county. is my most proudest moment, because without that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet so many of you that I've developed a relationship with over the last a lot of time that I've been here, number one. And I'm also very proud of the fact that by being able to work with people in this county, I have developed very strong relationships with people here. And I believe when you are a government official, that is the number one function you have, is you have to be able to work with people. You have to be able to work with people who don't agree with you, but you have to be able to make it work. And I am most proud of the fact that I live in a great county full of great people. This is your county, and this is the direction we're going to head in the next 10 to 20 years is going to be determined by the decision you make who's county judge. And so I'm very proud to live in this county. I'm proud I came back to this county. And for those of you that may not know me yet, I look forward to getting to know you, but the people of this county are what make this county great, and I am most proud of the relationships that I've built here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Weber, your proudest accomplishment.
Yeah, public service should not be about being a politician. It ought to be about public service. And my 44 years of public service, I think my greatest accomplishment was being able to touch under most impressionable period of their lives, young men and women from communities like this, and watch them excel and watch them mature and watch them become something. And I don't think there's any greater satisfaction than doing that. And that's been what's really been important to me. You know, we're all going to eventually be judged, not for what we do for ourselves, but for what we do for others. And I think if you bring that type of attitude into the county judge of a fairly small rural county and can get along with people and that permeates through there, you're going to make the right decisions and you're going to be okay into the future. But without a doubt, that was probably the greatest thing to me, is to work with young men and women and watch them truly make something of their lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Muzny, your proudest accomplishment.
Serving our county is my proudest accomplishment, both directly and indirectly. Indirectly through our staff, and we have 40 employees that I'm in charge of, hiring, retaining them, and making sure they have the equipment and medication necessary to serve our citizens. So most specifically, my proudest accomplishment recently as a community is we had 0 fatalities and 0 injuries during Hurricane Harvey. And I think the collaboration between city, county, officials and leaders were a huge part of that, and I was also part of that as well. So, community service.
Thank you.
The role of county judge has a lot of you got a lot of hats to wear in it. It's not only judicial, it's also administrative. There's so many different roles. What do you think is the most difficult responsibility of the county judge? I believe that Mr. Smalley will begin with you. The most difficult responsibility of the county judge.
In my opinion, it's dealing with the preparation of the budget. And the reason why is every decision you make affects somebody. Because for every dollar that you spend, somebody's got to pay that dollar. And I firmly believe that when you're making decisions with the people's money, which the county budget is your money, that it's very difficult, because sometimes when you go through a budget and you streamline it, you have to make some difficult decisions because you got to cut things sometimes you don't really want to cut. And maybe you have to spend more on a project you didn't really want to spend more on. But when you're dealing with people's money, which is a very important job of the county judge, is to be a steward of your money. You've got some tough decisions to make when you're preparing a county budget. You're working with the commissioners, and you're really having to think about it, because money affects how all of us live, every dollar. And so while it's one of the main functions of the county judge, it's also a very difficult job to figure out how to spend money. And I will tell you that if I'm fortunate enough to be elected as your county judge, I will take that responsibility very seriously, because this is serious times we live in, financially and otherwise. And I believe it's important to put somebody in the county judge's office who knows the county, and I have 33 years of experience here, so I ask you to consider me for that, and I appreciate you all being here today. It's a great day to have so many people here. Thanks.
Mr. Weber, thank you. What do you consider to be the most difficult responsibility of the county judge?
Yeah, it's pretty easy to be a leader when everything's going well, you know, but it's a little more challenging to be a leader when things aren't going well. And in this business, things don't go well sometimes. So I think one of the most challenging things is to be able to bring people together, gather the information, and make difficult decisions that aren't always going to make everybody happy. But we're a county, and there's got to be give and take. And so I think being decisive, but at the same time, having gathered the information from the people, and it is important. The budget is always important. I haven't met anybody, I met a few people that told me they had enough money. But we're not going to get enough money. We're going to have to prioritize. We're going to have to make some difficult decisions, but we got to do it together. And there's got to be some give and take. So I think that's probably the most challenging thing. And that's about communicating, being able to communicate with people throughout the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Muzny, what do you think is the most difficult responsibility of the county judge?
It is prioritizing. Also, most people don't realize the county judge is in a very powerful position, but it is a very influential position. So as a county judge, any major decision still has to get approved through Commissioner's Court. So it's not, as a single person, the power is limited, and that's thanks to democracy, right? This is not a dictatorship. So I think bringing people together, having to tell people no, and still maintaining those relationships is the most difficult part of the job.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes.
I think if you streamline the budget and cut the fat away and get rid of waste, that's going to make a lot of people happy, but that's also going to make a lot of people unhappy. So you have to manage both sides of that. But at the same time, kind of the Republican creed is, we don't like bureaucracy and we don't like big government. We want the government out of our business. And the way you keep the government out of your business is to be lean and be efficient and have no waste. Cut all the waste out of the budget, and that keeps the government away, and it also allows us to keep taxes down. But in order to get there, I think you're going to disappoint some people, and you just have to learn how to deal with that and manage those relationships.
Thank you.
All right, this goes to Mr. Weber first. I think all of you mentioned growth as a critical issue facing our county, but how about specific ideas of how you as a county judge would handle growth in the county in a beneficial and controlled manner? Specific ideas about how to handle that growth.
Yeah, it's coming whether we want it or not. We've said that. But if we're out in front of it, I think it's very important that we target the right type of growth, the right type of business, the right type of industry or manufacturing that we want to come into our county. They're not going to come here. We got to go get them. And we've got so much in this county to sell them for people, young people to come in here with good jobs, opportunity, benefits, and bring their families and become a part of this. We have a lot of people here, and I know they get grief sometimes from Houston that come in here, but they come here with good intentions. They bring money, they bring resources. They want to get out of the city. They like our way of life. They like our standards. And we have to make sure that we take advantage of them and incorporate them and make them feel welcome here as well. But again, the whole thing is to target that industry that we want to bring in here and go get them and be very, very aggressive about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Muzny, specific ideas on how you as a county judge would handle growth in our county in a beneficial and controlled manner.
I want to touch on the explosion of growth on the north end of our county, specifically the Round Top area. We have no public service facilities there at all right now in the Round Top, Carmine, Ledbetter area. And that's my main concern right now, is we see the demographics and the changing population, specifically up there. I'm not saying it's not happening everywhere, but in that area on the north end of our county is lacking the public service, police and EMS presence there. We do have a station in Fayetteville, but it's a good 20-25 minutes away from some of those areas. So that's my biggest concern right now. And we do have a great fire department and first responders in that area, but we are, specifically during the Antique Festival, we see that service lacking there.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes, specific ideas on handling growth.
I think you have to incentivize companies to come here and you have to vet them and figure out what kind of companies we want in our county. I think you need to get a commitment from those companies to train and hire county residents and not just bring folks in from out of town. I mean, that is inevitable, but at the same time, management positions, they'll probably bring, their own folks, but, we want industry that creates job opportunities for our residents, and that'll increase their cash in their wallets. It'll allow them to buy homes, which, increases the tax base. And I just think we need to be very selective about who we allow in, and we do that by, maybe incentivizing them with some tax breaks and things like that to get them started. And that way we can control who's here, and then again, we want to make sure that we have the proper ordinances in place and laws and ordinances so that things just don't get out of control.
Thank you. Mr. Smalley.
When you're talking about growth, you're essentially talking about jobs. And you want to make this an attractive place for companies, businesses, even individuals to want to come and start businesses here. You want them to bring good paying jobs, which in turn attracts people to want to come live here because the jobs are here for them to be able to support their families, and they don't have to commute long distances like I'm sure there's many of you that know people right now who live in this county but have to commute long distances in order to be able to support their families to jobs in one of the big cities that surround us. And so what I want to do is I want to make this an attractive place for people to want to bring their businesses here, and people then will not have to commute long distances to work because they'll have comparable paying jobs where they can not only live in the county but work in the county, which helps our local economy because they'll be contributing more to our economy as opposed to wherever they happen to work. And so I believe it's very important that our county be attractive to that. And the way we do that, forgive me for being repetitive, but I'm going to go back to my discussion of the tax rates here. A business sees a low tax rate and a tax base in a county, it will attract businesses to want to come here. And I believe that's how we'll best deal with the growth that's coming our way.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe each one of you has talked about lean budgeting. Give an example of how our county government could be more efficient, fat or waste that could be cut out. And I believe, Ms. Muzny, you're the first one on this one. Let me repeat it just again one more time. Give an example of how our county government could be more efficient.
First thing that came to mind is our county employees are doing their time cards by hand. I think that's an outdated procedure, and we've been attempting to change this practice for some years now, and I think it's getting closer. But our department alone, with our 40 employees, we spend 16 hours calculating time cards by hand. That does not to mention the other 140 other employees, the county employees that our auditor's office and their department's heads have to calculate. So I'd love to see our that procedure be made more efficient. I had one other. I lost it.
Mr. Rhodes, what could be an example of how you would make the county operation more efficient, waste that could be cut?
Well, I think the county needs to go to a zero-based budgeting. The companies I work for have done that. The goal of a publicly traded company is to maximize shareholder wealth. As the county judge, there's a fiduciary responsibility to not waste, the county residents' money. I've looked at the budget for this county. It's online, the budgets for the past 10 years. And what you see is a trend. So a department will have, X amount of budget for the prior year, and then the next year they'll come in and they'll say, well, I need X plus this. Zero-based budgeting, you basically come in and you still have your line items, but they're all zero. Because just because you have an expense in year one doesn't mean you necessarily have an expense in year two. So I think every line item needs to be vetted and looked at, and it has to be justified each and every year. And that's the way you do that. That's the way you create a lean, efficient, transparent budget, is with zero-based budgeting. That is how I would do it, because I believe as having a fiduciary responsibility to you folks. That's the best way I know how, and it works.
Thank you. Mr. Smalley.
How do you make government more efficient?
Specific, yeah, let me read it again.
Sure.
Give an example of how our county government could be more efficient. Fat or waste could be cut out.
In my opinion, the way you do that is through teamwork. Okay? To make the government more efficient, you've got to make it efficient for the people. I still believe in government of, by, and for the people. So to make efficiency, you need to work together. By doing that, then you have some tough decisions you have to make sometimes when you make cuts to a budget. Because when you cut something in a budget, you're cutting something that someone out there cares about. They're not going to be very happy with you. So you got to work together with people. You got to listen to people. You got to talk to people, which is why forums like this are so important. Because we, the candidates, need to hear from you about what's important to you. And that is how I believe you make the government more efficient, is by working together.
All right, Mr. Weber.
Well, we all know governments are inherently inefficient, so we've got to figure out how we can get there in an efficient manner without all the politics and bureaucracy involved. And I think it's just very important. We make budgets, in a sense, a lot more complicated than they really are. I mean, if you were to pick up, and I've studied the 2017 budget of the county, if you open it up, the normal person is going to have trouble getting through that thing. But you know, before we beat ourselves up too bad about efficiencies in budget in this county, and I've been to a lot of counties, executive treasurer, textile, I've been to most of them, and I think we're doing a fairly good job here. We're not taking, we're not spending more than we take in. We're pretty good at predicting what we take in. And so I think the way we become more efficient is let's kind of keep doing what we're doing, but let's go back and make sure we have our priorities in place. And then let's have transparency. Let's hold ourselves accountable. Let's make sure what we're spending our money on is what we say we're going to spend it on. Because it's not my money or their money, or it's your money. It's the people's money. So I think that's the way you can clean up and become very efficient. But I think for the most part, in other counties I've seen, we're doing a pretty good job.
All right, this goes to Mr. Rhodes first. A big part of the county judge's job is presiding over juvenile court. Do you feel comfortable in presiding over juvenile court? And if so, what's your experience in this area?
Man, thank you. That's in my wheelhouse. I actually ran the juvenile docket in Bastrop County. The goal, there's a little bit of a different goal between adults and juveniles. The goal as a prosecutor and as a judge for juveniles to rehabilitate, not necessarily to punish. And so you kind of have to treat them differently. And there's also, you have to look at, we all do stupid things. Some are legal and some are illegal. And so most of the time, those juveniles in front of you have just done something stupid that's illegal. So as a judge, you have to think, do I want to scar this young man or woman's criminal record? And that's a huge decision. There are a lot of programs in place to help juveniles that make bad decisions, and I think the county needs to use all those resources to help our children when they make a bad decision, to help them kind of get back on the right track. But the main thing we want to do is to teach them for every choice there's a consequence, and that's kind of the role of the juvenile docket and the juvenile judge, and I have actually direct experience in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smalley, thoughts on presiding over juvenile court if you were elected?
I do not have experience in presiding over juvenile court, unlike Mr. Rhodes, I do not have a law degree. I have knowledge of what that entails, as that's one of the duties of a county judge. I'm confident in my abilities to be able to handle that, because it is my understanding that whichever one of us gets elected county judge, we will go to some specific training and some educational courses that will provide us with the information that we will need to perform those duties, and I'm confident I'll be able to pick up whatever I need to know to perform that function for the county.
Thank you. Mr. Weber, thoughts on presiding over juvenile court?
Yes, as a general officer, you're the convening authority for general, summary, and special court martials. And, over 36 years, I got to tell you, I've seen them all. From shaken baby syndromes to murder to juveniles, sons and daughters of young Marines and sailors in trouble, drugs, everything else. And I have presided over a lot of those cases. And it's very, very important, as somebody said in here, not to ruin somebody's life over something that, we all make mistakes. But at the same time, if we've got these laws on the books, we've got to enforce them. We've got to hold our young people accountable. And I try to do that. Again, I mentioned earlier, one of the greatest satisfactions I have is watching young men and women who've made mistakes make something of their lives. So I feel very confident I've experienced to deal with those kind of things because it's very, very important.
Thank you. Ms. Muzny, thoughts on presiding over juvenile court if elected?
So this is one area that I was not comfortable with when I was considering putting my name in the hat for this position. I have done my research and talked with our juvenile probation department and our county attorneys to help and learned that it is a collaborative effort between those two departments, the county judge and at times the district judge. The county judge also sits on the juvenile board, and because this is a collaborative effort, any case is seen in a collaborative effort to do what's best for the minor. Another thing I think we need to touch on with the juveniles is the mental health component. Mental health services is something in the rural communities that is lacking. We do have a good foundation here in our community, but our county judge is also sits on the mental health department, but collaborative effort as well. So, and I not only see direct relationships with adults, but also with juveniles, the mental health component.
Thank you.
Thanks. We've had a lot of interesting topics here already. Now let's jump to one more that'll be controversial. Have you formed an opinion on the new FEMA flood control policy, which was adopted on a split vote by Commissioners Court? And I believe, Mr. Smalley, that you have the first opportunity to respond. Have you formed an opinion on the new FEMA flood control policy?
I've heard and read about it, but I really haven't formed an opinion on it yet. But it's a very controversial issue. And what I would like to do is I would like to talk to you, the voters, see what you think about it, because it's as I'm sure all of you have heard, there's a lot of controversy there. So no, I have not formed my own opinion yet, but I would like to hear from you, see what you think, and I'm sure, like I said, working together, we can come up with some good solutions. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Weber.
I've often wondered why are we in a position where we have to have such a policy? Why do we continue to have people live in floodplains here? Why you in LaGrange and the area, don't worry about it, you're in a 100-year floodplain. We may be, but that's not the case anymore. Something is changing, and it seems to me that we need to look at trying to find a little maybe affordable housing in a better area for some of our people and get them out of the floodplain. With that said, I also would like to talk to LCRA and some of the others. Everybody's in good shape upriver. They're doing a great job up there. But I got to tell you, downriver, we're getting hammered down here. And is there anything that could be done to prevent some of that? Because things are changing. This just isn't a 100-year floodplain anymore. We got people suffering every couple of years because of the situation down here. So I'd like to get them out of the area so we wouldn't have to have that type of restriction.
Ms. Muzny.
Yes. So as a reminder, our county has had 4 flooding disasters in the last 2 years. So with that, our flood insurance premiums are expected to rise because we're now seen as a high-risk area. The major dilemma with the floodplain mitigation plan is the base flood elevation. What is it and where should it be? Should it be 2 foot base flood elevation or 3 foot, which means 2 or 3 foot above where the flood water is expected? And the big dilemma here lately has been between the 2 and the foot, between 2 and 3 foot. Unfortunately, FEMA is really a moving target. Our county is using its best judgment to hit the target based on what is also going to be rising premiums for our citizens. The county does participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, and because of the county's participation in this, We've received nearly $60 million for our county residents for the Hurricane Harvey effort so far. There's supposed to be more money coming down the way, but I know the biggest issue for our community is the base flood elevation, and where does that, how's that going to affect those that were recently flooded? And so again, we're using the information we can to make these determinations for the entire county for the best of all.
You know, I really haven't formed an opinion. I mean, it's a tough decision, right? I mean, if we increase the floodplain, it keeps premiums down. But if we do that, and I guess the other side of the coin is we're requiring folks to raise their homes, 2 or 3 feet. And I don't know how you raise a home on a slab. I guess it can be done, but I'm guessing it's very expensive to do as well. So it's a balancing act. It's very tough. The biggest issue I have with all of this is, probably I know Grange's poorest residents live in the trailer parks down by the river. I don't understand how the county or the city has allowed a landowner to come buy this lot and say, yeah, you can put everything you own in a trailer right here, and then it washes away, and that landowner just gets to kind of wipe his hands clean of it, his or her hands clean of it, and say, okay, well, that's your problem, not mine anymore. I just think there's been a break right there, and that's what needs to be addressed. We don't need to be letting our most, vulnerable residents live in such a high-risk area, and that was kind of my disappointment with the whole thing. We have a rental property, and we have a family living in there now, and we gave them all of our extra furniture and clothes for their kids, and didn't even charge them rent for a month and a half because they didn't have anything. Their house was in Columbus somewhere, in the river. So that's my biggest issue with it.
Thank you. All right, this will go to Mr. Weber first. Sales tax collections reduce our property taxes. However, hundreds, if not thousands of dealers do not collect the legally required sales taxes during the semi-annual antiques weekends in the Round Top and Warrenton area. What can the county do to correct this problem?
I've spent a lot of minutes on the internet trying to figure out whose responsibility is it to go get those taxes. Is it local? Is it state? And from what I can tell, based on what I've read, it's the state comptroller's office that's got to enforce a lot of this. But taxes revenues are important. I think the county's got to realize we're all in this together. It was because some of those great tax revenues up north is what probably allowed us to lower our property tax rate down here. But that's very complicated. Taxes are very complicated. Boy, I'd like to pay no taxes. I'd like to have really low property taxes, but you can lower your property tax rate and still pay more in taxes every year. The key is generating revenues, and if our appraisals, we don't have the right people on the appraisal board, they're out of sight, our taxes, the money we have to spend are going to go up. But, I really believe that it's the responsibility, as sure, of the owner, the vendor, to comply with the law, find out what the law is there on the books, but ultimately the state's got to become involved with that, and the county judge's got to go up there and sit at the table with some of these people and say, we need some help down here. And so I think that's the solution, really.
Thank you. Ms. Muzny?
Repeat it.
Yes, sure. Essentially, how would you bring all those vendors into tax collection compliance?
So you had mentioned they don't collect sales tax. I will tell you they do collect sales tax. They just don't report it or turn it in. They keep it in their pocket. It's from what I've seen from experience. Because they have no problem charging you, right? It is the state comptroller's job to ensure they're enforcing and getting the sales tax. I know our current administration has attempted and had the comptroller's office out there on several occasions to enforce the laws. I'm curious if most of these vendors are used to having a permitting process when they come in to sell their goods at an event, wherever they're at. They usually buy a permit and then they're allowed to sell there. I'm curious if a permitting process would help alleviate some of this. And part of the permitting process would be they would have to in turn report and pay their sales tax collection. So just an idea out there. I'm not sure if that would work, but I would be interested in looking more into a permitting process to help collect the sales tax.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes?
You know, I'm a firm believer in that you don't create a law if you can't enforce it, right? I don't know how you, I mean, it's the ultimate barter system out there, right? I mean, if you don't know how many antique chairs someone's bringing in, then how do you know how many they sold, or how do you know what they sold them for? It's a difficult question to answer, to be quite honest with you. I think the other thing we need to consider is we don't want to make it so restrictive that they stop coming in, right? You know, antiquers stop coming in and selling their goods, because I would imagine that we get a lot of ancillary benefits from the antique fair, as far as restaurant sales, sales in other shops around the county, and hotel sales, things like that. So it's a very tough question to answer, and I don't know if there is an answer. I don't know how you police it, to be quite honest with you. So.
Thank you. Mr. Smalley?
Similar to Joe, I've done some research on this, and I have found the same thing you have, Joe, that it's a state comptroller issue. It's also, like James said, a difficult question. How do you police this? And so I believe the most effective solution is that the county judge, who represents you in the county, should work with the state comptroller on this issue, and I think that's going to be the best solution to this problem.
Thank you.
Okay, let's continue with problems that get solved somewhere else, maybe. You know, we've had a lot of oil and gas exploration in our county, and that brings with it some pretty heavy rigs. How will you work with energy companies to have them cover the costs of damages to our county's roads by their oil rig haulers and supply operators? And I believe this begins with Ms. Muzny.
So we've seen the explosion of oil and gas, specifically on the south end of our county near Flatonia. Our commissioners are doing an excellent job documenting what the roads look like now, and then potentially what the roads are going to look like when the big trucks are done with them. So it really is up to the commissioners and the judges to be collaborating with them to make sure the documentation is there, whether it's videoing the roads or taking pictures of the roads to get the before and after reimbursements done. But they are doing a good job getting that documentation there so that county can be reimbursed properly.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes.
You know, I guess the best, I don't know the best way to do that, but I would think maybe if the county had some sort of surcharge, right? I mean, if you know Intervest is going to come in and tear up your roads, maybe the county can, you know, determine an average cost of a company coming in and drilling and just place a surcharge on those big oil companies. They can afford it. I mean, why not ask for it? It'll relieve, I guess, budgetary pressure, you know, for our roads and our bridges and things like that. And, you know, I think that's probably the best way to handle this surcharge.
Mr. Smalley, how will you work with energy companies to have them cover the costs of damages caused by their oil rig haulers and supply operators?
I'm also in favor of the surcharge, but I also believe it's a responsibility of the county judge and the commissioner's court to agree before we do something like that. Because if you impose a charge on somebody, you're not going to make them very happy. So in order to encourage people to want to do things like this in our county without tearing up our roads without repair, I believe that's up to the commissioner's court to make those kinds of decisions. So while I personally would be in favor of a surcharge, that is not a decision the county judge alone can make. I would work with the commissioner's court on this to deal with this issue.
Mr. Weber?
Yeah, as the executive director of TxDOT dealt with this in the Eagleford down south, totally tore up the roads down there. And they'll tear them up here. These roads were never made. They don't have the base on them to handle these trucks. But at the same time, this is Texas, and it's the way it is. We drill, baby, drill, and it's brought a lot of resources and great things to our state, and it's not going to stop. But I will tell you, probably one of the most toughest lobby in Austin is the trucking industry. And so at TxDOT, we work very closely with our legislators to try to get them to help us. Other states have done that, where they have imposed fees on the individual trucking companies, and some have been successful, some haven't. But I think before we do anything, we've got to really work with our state legislature. We've got to work with our rep here, and we got to get up there and say, beat on the table again, because that's how the people down south in the Eagle Ford got results. That's how we ended up pumping $130 million down there on their roads, is because they came to the legislature and let the state legislature know what's happening to our small rural counties. And I would be willing to do that. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. This goes to Mr. Rhodes first. If elected, what tools and or personnel would you utilize to be accessible and provide timely responses to the residents of Fayette County? Talk about how you would be accessible to everyone in Fayette County.
Well, I think being a county judge is a 24/7 job. I think you obviously, it's such a big job, you have to delegate to your department heads and your employees, but I would always be available. You never know when an emergency is going to come up, and an open door policy, and I guess nowadays an open cell phone policy is just kind of what you have to have. And I'd certainly be willing to do that, because it just comes with the territory.
Thank you. Mr. Smalley, talk about accessibility to the residents of Fayette County.
I would be glad to give you my cell phone number, my email. I would also have an open door policy in my office, and one of my favorite things to do is what we're doing today. I'm happy to make time to come out in the community like this, visit with you, hear what's on your mind, hear your concerns, hear your issues. Let's talk to one another. Because as I've been saying, the most effective way to run a government is teamwork. I work for you as the county judge, so I need to be accessible to you. I need to hear from you. So I am all happy to talk to you anytime, either in the office or catch me in the grocery store or wherever I may be in the community. But forums like this, I'll be glad to do them anytime.
Thank you. Mr. Weber, talk about accessibility.
Yes, commitment and accessibility are very important. I worked 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for 36 years as a United States Marine. And I got to tell you, as the executive director at TxDOT, we didn't get many evenings or weekends off either. So my commitment there. My accessibility, I'll have an email that you can email me anytime you want. It'll be at the county office. My personal phone is 979-777-9896. And I'm not changing it, so it's right here. In addition to that, I will probably be at every social event that you have out here, because I enjoy them. From buying chicken to a barbecue, a dance, or whatever, I'll be out there, and a county judge has got to do that. He's got to be out there with his people. So I pledge to you that you won't have any trouble gaining access to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Muzny, talk about accessibility.
It really is no different than what is required in my current position as EMS director. It is 24/7, 365 availability and accessibility. So yes, my cell phone, email, social media is a big deal now. Open door policy. One of my favorite parts of my job I'm currently in is going out among our county and going to all the communities, not just check on our staff, but also to check on our residents. So I would continue to do that, because I do enjoy it very much, and having your face out there among the entire county is a big deal.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We've talked a lot about working with others. What connections with elected officials currently in office do you already have, and how could those relationships be beneficial to the county as a whole? We begin with Mr. Smalley. Your connections with current officials.
I know some of the current JPs. I know some of the current commissioners. I know many of the current county officials, just from having lived here a long time. And so how will my current relationships with people in the county benefit the county? It's because by those relationships I've already built, I can effectively make the government work for you, the people, by teamwork. That's how I'm going to do it. I will work with people, and I will make things effective in our government.
Mr. Weber, thank you.
Yeah, we got great people in this county. A lot of them work in that courthouse for many years. They got a lot of knowledge. We got great civil servants working in our security, our safety, taking great care of us, and there's not going to be any problem with me getting along with them. Matter of fact, I've got a lot to learn from them if I get elected to be your county judge. But I'm going to tell you the most important people that I need to get along with and get up there and forge relationships with, and I still have some of the people in Austin. Because I'm going to tell you, we've got to make sure that we're being taken care of as a small rural county in the state legislature. Because I'm telling you, the tide is turning. I'm connected with people up there at TxDOT. I walk 6 times a day across that street on 11th Street into that Capitol building, answering questions before every committee I can think of. And I think it's going to be very important that we have someone as our county judge who can go up there and get things done for the benefit of our great county.
Thank you. Ms. Muzny.
So I currently know and work with most elected county officials, Commissioners Court specifically. I attend nearly every Commissioners Court meeting. Most specifically, I work closely with our county attorney's office, which also serves as the district attorney, our sheriff's department, and JP's. So I am very well meshed with all the county elected officials in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes.
I've worked with directly with the district judge, the commissioners, the county attorney, the county clerk, district clerk. I have a very good relationship with all those folks and their staff. And I always go to them with my hat in my hand, because without the support staff, you really don't have anything. And so I always try to treat them with the utmost respect. All the offices in the county are very professional. I know, I would say probably 99% of all of them, the elected officials and their staff, and so I have a very good working relationship with all those folks.
Right, this goes to Mr. Weber first. A severe governance problem is unfunded mandates. Those from the feds flow to the state, and the states flow to the county. Examples of those affecting the public school districts, healthcare, medical services. What can a county judge do to stem the trend of unfunded mandates?
Well, at the county level, I'm not sure that we can do too much other than accept them when they come down. But again, I'm going to go back to you and tell you, you got to get the people that are directly above you in Austin, in the federal government that sends these down through the state, down through the counties. That's where you've got to go generate support to fight them, because they're not good. We are capable of taking care of ourselves in this county. We don't need help from the federal government or the state unless it comes with money and strings that aren't too attached. But the mandates are killing us, and we don't need them. And I don't know why we have them. I don't know if we brought them on ourselves, because at some point in time it was sure nice to have somebody take care of us. But we've got to get out of that. And our history and our traditions and where we come from is totally against that. So I'll tell you, mandates that do nothing for our county and our people, I'll be up there fighting them as much as I can, because we don't need them and we don't want them.
Thank you. Ms. Muzny, thoughts on unfunded mandates?
I think these are directly tied with their tax rates, specifically in rural areas. So the county budgets about between $400,000 and $500,000 a year just for indigent health care. So if you're not aware, one of the unfunded mandates is the county has to provide indigent health care to its residents. Another one is indigent defense, and then also requirements for the jail. So these are the 3 major unfunded mandates that do cost the county quite a bit of money. And I think speaking with our legislatures on this and making sure they bring these issues up and vote correctly to help us is the biggest way to help reduce those.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes, unfunded mandates.
I think you find those in the budget, and it goes back to kind of what we've all been preaching is have a lean, efficient budget so you can cover those unfunded mandates, and that's the critical piece is, you want to run a balanced budget, but you also, it would be nice to have surplus for the mandates and for any emergencies that may come up. And that just kind of goes back to the basis of my whole platform is lean, efficient budget with no waste, and that's how you fund it.
Thank you. Mr. Smalley.
We certainly don't want the federal government telling us how to run our county. And I do not want unfunded mandates here, but we have to deal with it. As the county judge, we represent you to the state, so we need to work with the state legislature like Joe was saying. But we have to deal with unfunded mandates. The best way we can deal with from a budget standpoint is we can have a surplus in our budget where we have that money to use for that if necessary. And the best way to do that is to have low tax rates, a balanced, responsible fiscal budget, which frees up money for things like this if we need it, and also making sure that our county is not in debt at all so we can have a surplus of money and extra money. But I am not for unfunded mandates. You don't want it, we don't need it. So I'm with Joe on that.
Thank you.
We're getting down to the end of this, and so I hope that you've been thinking about questions that you would like to ask. During the break, you're going to have an opportunity to turn in those questions, and we'll take a little break and then ask your questions. So our last question before the break is a pretty simple one. How many county commissioner court meetings have you attended within the past year, and if any, was your attendance associated with your current job responsibilities? I believe that you get the easy, you get the start.
So I attended majority of them. Yes, mainly due as for my current position as EMS director, but it's been the vast majority.
One. Someone told me if you're going to be the county judge, you need to attend a commissioner's court, and I did. And I guess my biggest fear with the commissioner's court before I attended was, do the commissioners just kind of rubber stamp whatever the judge says? And I can happily report that no, they don't. They actually talk about the issues and they vet them and they discuss them, and I was actually quite impressed with that. But I've been to one commissioner's court meeting.
I have not been to a commissioner's court meeting yet, but you can keep up with information that the commissioner's court does online. It's all public information. I keep up with it, and as I was saying earlier, if I am fortunate enough to be elected, there will be a lot of training, a lot of meetings. I'll be attending a lot of commissioners' court meetings during that whole process of training, whichever, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected in the time between the election and when we take office. So I am very familiar with what the commissioners' court does. I keep up with it, I study it, and hopefully in the near future, if I'm fortunate enough to win, I'll be attending a lot of commissioners' court meetings.
I've been to one. I went to see what was going on. I thought it was very interesting, and I'm glad I was there. I compared it to the commission meetings that, as the executive director of TxDOT, every month we held with 5 commissioners appointed by the governor. Same type of scenario, an agenda of 25 or 30 things. The commissioners vote on it, you present it. A lot of the same rules, very much the same. What was different is that in those commission meetings that I kind of moderated at TxDOT, there were 200 or 300 people in there. So in the commission meeting I went, there was probably 8 or 10, I guess, which wasn't so bad either. So thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Did a great job. Appreciate it. We're going to take a 15-minute break. And when I say 15 minutes, we're taking a 15-minute break because I want to give you plenty of time to, I want you to turn in your questions now, and that way it'll give our moderators a chance to go through them and make sure, there are no duplications. And then I'll call you back to start the question and answering again at 20:10. So, thank you.
Hey man, how are you? Good to see you.
They all sounded good. They all did pretty good.
Oh yeah, they're 4.